Hello and welcome to our June Spotlight webinar with Syxsense. Today, we have our industry expert, Graham Brooks, here to give us an inside look into how to streamline with Syxsense. If you have any questions, please add them to the chat and Graham will reach out after to answer those. And with that, Graham Brooks.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. So today, specifically, we're going to be walking through patch management. Specifically, we want to know how to make it less painful. To do that, I'm going to be walking you through our platform, and we'll get into some specifics, show you how to automate a lot of things that traditionally people might be doing manually. We'll also introduce you to some of the mechanics of the toolset to understand kind of where our product is positioned, some of the benefits that are inherent to how we host our management plane, and then also how to use some of our automation tools to make patching less painful, less torturous, and just a little bit easier to handle. Right off the bat here, we're looking at our home screen. Let's talk through architecture so you understand how to use our product from a high level. We are a cloud-hosted enterprise solution. We live in Azure, though that doesn't really matter as long as you're okay using Microsoft Cloud. That's where we're storing all of the content. We have an agent that you will install on each of the devices that you want to manage using Syxsense. Once that agent is installed, it will then start to collect information about your assets, and then it will upload that information to the Syxsense console in Azure. With that information, the console can then make educated decisions based off of policies that you've created to decide what work happens on which devices. And you can actually see some of the outcomes of that work here on the home screen. I have my current patch health, my current configuration health, and then the trust status of my endpoints just laid out there in a nice column. You can see that most of my devices are healthy, but I do have a slim subset that are in a current critical state. If I want, I can actually click on that list of critical devices, and it will bring up the endpoints that match that scenario. From there, using our platform, I can actually immediately start deploying work. So if I need to, I can just highlight these specific devices, right-click on them, and tell it to patch all. From there, the Syxsense console will then disseminate patches down to the device, and you're off to the races. But that's leaving out a lot of the middle work. It's leaving out a lot of the decision-making process that would allow us to actually automate. Because the title of this session is how to make patching a little less torturous, how to make it less painful, easier to manage. And if you're always having to go into the product and telling it to deploy content all the time, we haven't actually done our job, because our goal is to automate everything all the time from the cloud. So with that in mind, I'm going to walk you through a couple of the key functions of patch management on our platform and a couple use cases and tools you can use to push out that content. Before I do that though, I do want to talk through the sort of information that Syxsense is tracking so that you can get an idea of how we're actually going to structure patch deployments, how we're going to target devices successfully in your environments. Right now, we're looking at the device overview for this particular endpoint. We can see some basic telemetry. I can see when the device was last scanned. I can see how many outstanding patches we need to scan. Right now, it's up to date. It's been patched, scanned today. We're in really good condition there. I do have one critical patch currently pending. That's how we got here, is we had that list of critical devices, trimmed down to this list, found this device, one critical patch. I also have 4 non-critical patches, one of which is high priority, 2 of which are no priority. If I want to see those items specifically, I can head over to the patch tab and it will show me the individual items of non-compliance. Again, if I wanted to, I could always just select an item and deploy directly to that endpoint. Other things that are important to note from this area is we can also perform RMM tasks. So we do have some remote monitoring and management in the platform, though that's not our primary use case. I've also got process viewer access, file browser access, team viewer, if you need it. There's a lot of baked-in tools within our platform for anyone who's looking for more than just patch management. That said, today we're going to be focusing our attention towards the patch deployment process and managing strategically which endpoints we push content to and which ones maybe we deploy at maybe a slower rate. To do that, we're going to take a look real fast at our inventory. And here we can see some basic information around the device name, the owner, so the person who's logging into it the most frequently, when it was last rebooted, who the manufacturer of this device is. I also have a software list here so I can evaluate which products are already installed. This is relevant for patching, so you can see versioning information. I can pull back OS level information as well. So what version of Windows am I running? Is it severely out of date? Does it need a future update deployed to it? Is it out of support? So it's no longer receiving maybe some of those critical security patches from Microsoft. All of that is going to be relevant when we start building out a patch deployment portfolio. To that end, now that we kind of understand some of the sort of information we have in our platform, we're going to build a really simple process that's going to evaluate devices as they are added into the Syxsense platform. To do that, I'm going to jump over to my Cortex tab. This is our automation engine. This is kind of the beating soul of the tool. The idea is you want to deploy work to devices, but you don't want to have to do it manually. You like to have a way to push maybe a security scan, you want to deploy patches, maybe you want to look for particular software products and ensure that they're installed or not. We'll do all of that work for you through our automation tool set. And so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to open this new endpoint inventory. This is a workflow that I've published as a policy. And what that means is whenever a device comes online for the first time, it immediately kicks off this workflow, which performs an inventory scan. So it understands what software is installed. It evaluates the OS. Everything that we saw on that list is what we're looking at. Then it performs a security scan. Security scanning is a little bit outside the scope of today's session, but think about like what a Rapid7 or Qualys or Tenable solution is going to do for you. That's the sort of space we're looking at. And then afterwards, whether we found content or not, we're going to do a patch deployment scan. So determine what content is relevant from a patching perspective as well. If I go up to current here and go down to run number 5, we can actually see historically what has happened on my devices. So I hit that inventory scan button. It'll actually show me a list of devices, and it shows their status, where they successfully deployed, did something break, what's going on with them. After which it then does a security scan. It will tell me if there are any items detected or not. And then it does a patch scan as well. Some of my devices detected stuff, some of them didn't. You can kind of see that breakdown across the different assets in our library. And so that's how we're getting all of this new information added into the console. From there, we can then evaluate reports that'll show us what patches are found, maybe what items have been deployed, and get an idea of the current state of our environment. To do that, I would head over to my reports tab. I would then select maybe our detected patches by device report. I'm going to show 0 count here, so it'll list out devices that are healthy, and then hit submit. Now, depending on the number of devices you have in your environment, this might take a couple moments, or it might respond super fast and just give you that outcome immediately. For me, it was relatively quickly. I've got a couple devices that have quite a few patches pending, but most of my endpoints are in relatively good shape. So here I've got some Linux endpoints specifically, which are missing a fair number of patch contents. And then the rest are somewhere between 5 or 0 patches, which is great. That's kind of what you want to see. As we scroll through the content list, it'll show me the specific items that are outstanding. So I can see that I do have some of these kind of standard KBs that all are showing critical on each of my devices. So it looks like we do have some legitimate content that we need to provision on our endpoints. Now, I don't want to make this a chore for you. I want to make sure that this is an easy, repeatable process that you don't have to do on a daily or weekly basis. We want to just enforce it and see it work for the rest of time. To do that, we're actually going to head back over to Cortex. From there, I'm going to create a new super simple workflow. I'm going to use this blank template, and then we're going to build out our deployment of patch content. So we just did a scan, we found some materials that need to be managed, and then we did a detected patch report, so it showed us what contents are currently pending. And now we're going to create a workflow that's going to start resolving some of those items. The first thing on my list is going to be a patch scan and deploy. So let's just scan again, see if there's anything new that's changed in the last couple hours. If there is, let's then look for that content and then deploy whatever we find. Now, you could always just choose critical patch content. That's great. But for the moment, I actually want to get a little bit more specific. I want to take a look and see if I can find that specific KB that was listed as critical. And so to do that, I'm going to show statistics here. And then I am going to filter by required. I'm going to filter that again. So it'll show me just the devices that have contents required. And then here's my list right here. And if I scroll over, you can see that this is the critical one, I believe, that we were just looking at. And if I open that up, it's going to give me a bigger overview of that particular patch. I can see its identity. I can see description information. As you saw here already, I have some useful description fields around the severity of it, vendor information, published date. A lot of really useful telemetry for your IT staff and for your security staff to use. But where does all this come from? It's actually going to be hosted by Syxsense. We have a content team that is responsible for scanning the news. They scan repositories from Google, Adobe, Amazon, Oracle, Microsoft, all these big name vendors that we have partnerships with. And we just evaluate their content lists. And whenever they release updates, we take those updates and we put them into our content library. We also test that content to make sure that it's safe to deploy. We then make it available to our customers to install, like we're doing right now. For this example, I'm just going to install this single item, this single critical patch. I'm going to hit save. After we tell it to scan and deploy, we're then going to check to see if there's a reboot required because of this patch. So I'm going to type in reboot. One moment, there we go. Reboot. And is reboot needed is the question we're going to ask. If it is, great. Let's then perform a reboot with custom UI prompts. So we're going to send out a message to the user telling them that we are rebooting their device. I'm not going to let them cancel. I will let them snooze though for maybe an additional 15 minutes. So they'll see a prompt kind of like this on their computer screen. You can change the formatting of the text if you want. You can also throw a logo right here in the sidebar so they know it's from your team. From there, we can then deploy this to our endpoints, and it will automatically factor to determine which devices are relevant or not. So here I'm going to say critical June patches 2023. And then we're just going to go find that item. So I'm going to type in June, see what device patches we find. Here we go. This is the workflow we just made. And I've got two options. I'm actually going to show you both. I could either tell it to run now, which is what we'll do first. And this is then going to let me select individual devices. I'm going to keep it really simple and just say, hey, on all my devices, let's scan for and deploy this item. And then it's actually going to start up a real-time Cortex workflow. It's going to contact all those endpoints and just ask them, hey, do any of you have this specific patch pending? If so, let's start evaluating you and if necessary, deploying that patch against you. So that's what it would look like to run this in real time. This is great for truing up devices against critical 0 days that you need to resolve. But as we said at the beginning of this session, our goal is to make this process less torturous, less difficult, simpler, easier to manage. To that end, we also have this other option, which is our publish policy option. If I go back into that workflow fresh, I can select this option and tell it to run maybe once, or I could tell it to run on an interval, choose a particular schedule on a daily basis. I could run it whenever the device reboots or changes networks, or I could also choose a maintenance schedule, which is what we'll do today. From there, I can choose any number of different schedules based off of whatever I've built, whatever's pre-built for you to determine, hey, what time of day, what day of the week, do we have any blackouts scheduled as part of this deployment? You can just kind of factor whatever sort of deployment you need that's going to make sense for this 0-day patch remediation. Then again, you just choose a list of devices that make sense, hit save, and then you have a repeating task. On whatever cadence makes sense for you, that'll go out, look for content if necessary, deploy patch content, remediate those vulnerabilities, so that at the end of the day, you can get a report in your mailbox that looks kind of like this. This is a patch risk assessment. It'll show you your overall risk score, the number of devices in your environment, how many patches on average are pending for those devices, how many environments you have, what your overall timeline for patching is. It gives you a huge amount of useful information, and it's all graphically driven. So you're not relying on just a big table of data that you have to interpret. We also provide excellent reporting for particular industries. So if you guys manage credit card data, we've got PCI. If you care about medical records, we have HIPAA reporting. We also have SOX reporting too. So there's a wide variety of report templates that we can generate across multiple industries and verticals. Returning back to our Vortex workflow, to that automation, I want to see where we're at with that run. We just kicked it off. We should have some devices that are checking in. We should be able to see some of the results from that workflow, but it looks like we're not quite there yet, so we'll probably have to check in a couple minutes to see what the results are from that workflow. Before we get there though, the last thing I want to walk through is just a general overview of the sorts of information you can pull back and some of the other functions of our tool beyond automation. So on the homepage, we showed you the patch management content, we showed you configuration management and trust. Between those three things, we're actually looking at software that's installed, maybe ports that are open that shouldn't be. We're looking at patches that need to be installed. There's a wide variety of contents that are relevant. And with that all in play, you can then create automations that are going to enforce policies that keep your devices secure and trusted and reliable over the long haul. In summary, the goal here is to make sure that you're not going to have to spend a significant amount of time on that patching process. Generally, our benchmark for success is we want to take whatever amount of time you're spending on patch compliance and IT automation. We want to reduce that by about 70%. If we could do that, we think we've done our job pretty darn well. And something I want to leave you with, so you can get an idea of what that can look like. Not all scenarios are going to be easy. I showed you a pretty basic patch deployment summary, but there's going to be other scenarios like a server environment, like a web host or a DNS server that are going to take up a lot more effort because they're high priority endpoints. Rather than just serving one individual user, they're serving the entire organization. And how do I manage and maintain those devices safely? Well, we are a great tool for all scales of enterprise. We have customers that don't have servers, and I have customers that have thousands of servers under management. We have solutions for every scenario. This is a web server patching workflow that does all the same essentials as the workflow we just built together. It scans the device, it looks for content that needs to be updated, and it deploys content. But It does have some additional features, like, for example, an email that gets sent out at the beginning of the workflow, notifying the admin team that there's a patch that is going to be deployed out to servers. Then it has a wait command for a day, just so the staff can evaluate it, review it, make sure that it makes sense. And then we take the device through a process of ticket management. We're opening a new ticket for patching, lists out the number of devices and their names. It then checks those devices for reboot requirements. If necessary, it will reboot the devices as a prerequisite step. It'll update tickets as it goes. It will scan and deploy patch content. It'll scan and deploy vulnerability content as well. We could have a whole separate session about this. We've had multiple before, and we will have more again on that subject. It also looks for service evaluation. So we patch the devices. How are they doing? Did they get updated successfully? Did the service restart successfully? All of the things that you need to care about in managing servers, we're also going to manage in Syxsense. One of the things I talk about a lot is this concept of last mile compliance. Most organizations are able to true up their devices, I don't know, 80%, 90%. A lot of the endpoints aren't that hard. They're all running Windows 10 or 11 or the latest version of Mac OS. Their users connect to their devices daily for work. They're usually online and available. They're easy. But you're always going to run into those awkward one-off scenarios where maybe it's an HMI, that's a human machine interface that's running on a manufacturing floor, and you can't reboot it ever. Or you've got a web hosting server like this one that needs a little bit more care and attention when managing. Our product is built around making that 80%, the vast majority of your environment, simple so you don't have to think about it, and then giving you excellent tools so that last mile compliance, the stuff that really is sticky, that takes the longest to manage, the stuff that's hardest to deal with, we can then target that stuff directly and deal with those problems quickly so that you're not stuck churning through a significant amount of work on those endpoints day in, day out, week in, week out. So that's our session for today. Hope that this was helpful. If you have any questions around the materials we've shown today, please feel free to reach out to us. We would love to talk more. Hopefully maybe show you in your environment how Syxsense could be useful. Thank you for your time.